Intro Java students. I wanted to show you a couple of examples of things that you might think about for your independent projects. To remind you, you'll have 4 to 5 weeks to complete them, either individually or in pairs, at the end of which you will give a public demonstration and teach the class a little bit about some of the design decisions that you made to create your project or some interesting algorithms that were involved in creating it. So, as you watch this video, you might want to jot down some notes about things that you might want to think about further or investigate. So one whole set of ideas is you could extend one of the arcade games that we've made earlier in the year. Here are some interesting arcade games I think you might consider. This game is called Dig Dug. That guy is Doug, I guess. And as you can see, he digs. You can control him with the arrow keys. You wouldn't have to implement every aspect of this game, but one of the interesting mechanics in this game is these rocks that are entombed in the soil. If you touch the rock and then move out of the way, it will fall and crush some other things. There's a nice game where your goal is to collect diamonds, but avoid getting crushed by the rocks. I think this would make a nice kind of a game for you to create. This is a breakout style game. It's like Pong, except you've got these tiles, and the different colors of tiles do different things. So, as you can see, some of them, when they break, set off a chain reaction that breaks lots of other ones. Some of them give you special power-ups of different kinds, so they might give you the ability to shoot lasers, or the ability for the ball to stick on your paddle, so that way you decide when you want to release it. Also, you can see there are some hidden blocks that appear when it looks like there is no block there. There's really kind of no limit to what you can think of in terms of the powers that the blocks give you when they break. I think this is a particularly nice game because you know that you can make the basic one. So it's not going to be a problem finishing your project, and kind of the sky's the limit as far as interesting levels and interesting abilities that you can add to the game. So I think this is a really nice one to consider. You guys know this game. This is Super Hexagon. I think this shouldn't be too hard to create, although I would recommend that you be in at least Algebra 2 trig or higher, because we're definitely going to want to use some trigonometry when you're thinking about this. You know, I couldn't make up a better excuse for using polar coordinates either, so if you're in pre-calc and want a real-life example of using polar coordinates, this would be excellent. I think it would be a fun game to make. I've always hoped that a student would make it, and so far, none has. So this is one of 2 sand applications. The way this sandbox works is you can select a color like this, and then when you click and drag, it creates little tiny particles of sand, which then fall and build up, and as you can see, they kind of... no pile of sand becomes too high without them kind of falling down the sides. So I think this is a nice kind of physicsy simulation that's pretty easy to create, and you can make nice kind of little drawings. You could use this as the basis for something else, and that's what this next one is. You should ignore this falling man, but this next one you can use different things, not just sand, but you can drag and create rock. Again, ignore this guy. And once you've created some rock, then you can select a different thing, like sand, and you can pour the sand in there. Or you could select something like, where's water? Here's water. So I'm going to fill the inside here with water. And you see that's got a little bit of movement. And then there's all kinds of other things. So I've got plants. If plant touches water, the plant kind of absorbs all the water. I can have some seeds. So there's some seeds, and if I put water on the seeds, they turn into plants. So this is a nice kind of little sandbox that you can do different things with, and I think that you could imagine a lot of other things that you could do. You guys also know this game. This game is relatively simple to implement. It's also got the nice feature that you can make a basic version, or you can make a more advanced version where the arrows don't just come randomly, but come according to some pattern, maybe even a pattern that matches a song that you have playing simultaneously. So this is also, I think, a really nice game to consider. There's the classic Plants vs. Zombies. This is a harder game to make. You would not create a full Plants vs. Zombies. You'd have just a couple of possible things that you could place with very simple behaviors. But again, it's nice because you could kind of grow the behaviors a little bit. Pac-Man is also kind of along these lines. Either of those would be a sort of a medium to difficult game to implement. Here's another classic, Asteroid. You are this little triangle, and you can rotate, and you can shoot these asteroids, which are hurtling through space, and when you shoot them a couple of times, they break into smaller asteroids. So I think any of those arcade games would be good. If you have your own ideas about arcade games, you should definitely consider them. I'm open to any type of suggestion you might have. Alright, there's other things that you could look at as well, though. I've always wanted a student to do a computational model of how wildfires spread. This could be a particularly interesting one, I think. You can start with a two-dimensional grid, sort of like our foxes and rabbits simulation. Only instead of foxes and rabbits, you can create trees, and you can control the density of the forest. Then you can actually literally run some experiments. You could say if you've got some land where there's 25% tree coverage, and you start a wildfire somewhere, kind of on average, if you do this 100 times, what area burns, or how quickly does it burn? Or you could ask the question, does the entire forest burn down? And then how does your answer change as you increase the density of the trees? So clearly, if you have a 100% dense forest, there's a tree in every spot, the likelihood that a wildfire will destroy the entire forest is very high. And if you've got a 5% tree density, if a particular tree catches and burns, it's very unlikely that it will catch a neighboring tree on fire. But the question is sort of what happens in between. Is there some threshold that's the optimal tree density for controlling wildfires? And how well do strategies like clearing certain areas work in preventing wildfires? I think this is a really interesting project. You can do it at a very straightforward, simple level, or if you're interested in getting more authentic, I actually have some papers that talk about more professional models of looking at wildfires. So this is a nice one for being very practical. It's a serious question that people actually care about. And you can really do something substantive with it. Speaking of practical projects, here's something I really, really want. I, and I think other teachers as well, would love a tool where we just, we have a file that has all the names of our students, that's our class list, and it will generate random seating charts for us, but it needs to only be sort of random because we need to be able to say, you know, Jimmy and Joey shouldn't sit close to each other, or they can't sit in the same group. So I should be able to specify certain types of constraints about what kinds of seating chart I want generated, and then it should generate as many as possible, having students sit with as many different students as possible for each one. So I think what's interesting about this is probably I'd want you to interview me and maybe interview a couple of other teachers to decide what's a feature set that they would actually use. And then you'd go ahead and create it. And I would give you some support for how could you create it, because you would want to do things like potentially output the seating charts to files so that the teachers could use them. I have a project that I used to do in the AP class, and we don't do it anymore. And actually we used to do it in the intro class sometimes as well. It's a text adventure game. Also, you could think of it as an interactive narrative. So again, it's all text, but it starts, you say, you know, you wake up and you're in your room. It smells a little dank. And then you can type commands. You can say, look around, and it will give you a description of what's in the room. And you might say, go out the door. And then it will just give you a description of the new place. So you can kind of wander around this world and talk to people. There could be missions, like you have to collect certain items, and so forth. It's sort of up to you. It's a very flexible, large, powerful framework. I already have a lot of teaching materials for it that I've created, so like my other frameworks, you would start with a lot of code that already did something. You would learn about how it works, and then you would extend it a little bit and use it as the basis to create something interesting on your own. I think this is a particularly nice choice if you're more interested in something creative. I think it's also a particularly nice choice if you are reassured by the idea that there are steps to follow. That said, you can do some very complex things with this. So if you're interested in it, but you're worried that maybe it's not difficult enough, you can definitely do some very, very difficult things within this framework. And I can help you think about what might be interesting. Automated mark reading system. This is more of an advanced project, and I'm not going to tell you a lot of details, but the idea is you can use image processing. So you can look at the color values of individual pixels of a Scantron and try and have it automatically score a Scantron. This is totally within the scope of possibility for you guys. Vasu did this a couple of years back, and he did a pretty good job of it, but there's definitely more that could be done on the system. So if you're interested in creating an automated mark reading system, let me know, and I'll give you some resources about that. If you're interested in a more hardware-oriented approach, there's a microcontroller called an Arduino, and we have several of them. I'm interested in maybe hooking some sensors up to the Arduino so that when it detects that there's motion, it will take a picture of whatever is in the field of view of the camera and then email it to somebody, like potentially me. So this could be a sort of an intruder detection system. You should only choose this if you feel comfortable doing a lot of learning on your own. It's nothing that's particularly tricky compared to what you've done already. It's just new. So you would have to read some things on your own and do some things on your own. That said, it's really, really different than anything you've done so far. And Arduinos are really cool because this is sort of your gateway into robotics and other kinds of hardware. So you can hook a variety of different kinds of sensors into the Arduino. And it's a really convenient way to collect physical data. So if you're interested potentially in doing that in the future, this would be a good project for you. Finally, if you can find anybody with some kind of need that you could address with software, that is valid. So creating interactive demos for teachers of math or physics or economics would be great. Data collection tools for science or statistics would be good. We've used MIT App Inventor just like a little tiny bit, but if you can think of an app that is not too difficult that you think people might want to use, float the idea with me, and that could be acceptable as well. Finally, if you don't have enough ideas already, you can check out openprocessing.org, which has lots of other people's projects. They are not in a particularly organized way, but you can at least see what's interesting, and maybe that'll give you some ideas. You can also check out redblobgames.com. There's some things on that site that are probably going to be too difficult, but other things that might be appropriate. So you can see if anything looks interesting to you there. Okay, good luck.